Coming up on this episode of the Goldilocks Zone, we are going to talk about part 2 of our look at the 2016 presidential election. Right, that means the Democrats this week. We're going to be talking about the big fish in the small pond, Hillary Clinton. We're also going to be talking about the people who could upstage her, including Vice President Joe Biden and beloved Senator Elizabeth Warren, plus a whole list of other candidates. And we're going to have the first ever presidential primary draft right here on the show. Matt and I head-to-head on who can pick the better candidate, plus the winner of our Super Prize Pack giveaway. It's a jam-packed episode of the Goldilocks Zone, and we're going to start it right now. This is the Goldilocks Zone, episode number 6, recorded March 10th, 2015. Rock the Eventual Vote, Part 2, The Democrats of 2016. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Goldilocks Zone, the podcast that always votes for the third party. I'm Sean Jennings, joined by Mr. Democrat himself. I would vote him over a computer. It is Mr. Matt Mariani. Sir, how
LBJ all the way.
That's exactly right. What was Tippecanoe and
Tippecanoe and Tyler too.
There you go. So maybe we'll have to do a third election episode, like electing an old president today and what would happen.
54-40 or fight.
See, I don't know enough about old presidents. That's like I know like Theodore Roosevelt, but you're like, Sean, would you elect Martin Van Buren? And I like he has 3 names. I
think my favorite campaign slogan of all time is "Get on a raft with Taft."
But
that was an actual campaign slogan. Oh, of course he would. He'd sink the raft even if you didn't get on the raft.
Like the worst slogan. I think candidates need to bring back caboose tours, train tours, where they give speeches off the back of trains.
Monorails.
From town to town. Yeah, it's the future. We need monorails, right? I love that. Matt, it's good to be back.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking Democrats this week. I'm excited. I hope you are too.
Yeah. I'm ready to get into this.
Well, we've got a few housekeeping things. First of all, thanks to everyone who entered our Super Prize giveaway. The response was underwhelming. We had someone enter, and I'd like to announce the winner, Mason Radcliffe, at Mason Rad on Twitter, entered. He won our $20 Comixology gift card, so I hope he's out there buying some great comics with it. We appreciate all of you who entered, and we will be giving away more prizes in the future. So stick around and keep watching, and we'll let you know when we're doing that. And I do want to point out, we asked, when you entered the contest, we said, name your most over and underrated Marvel heroes. And our winning entry, most overrated Iron Man, most underrated Hawkeye.
Oh.
Which
I like that one.
It is. It's interesting. I believe I agree with Hawkeye, at least for the comics. Yeah. I think he's underrated. Iron Man, I guess if you look purely on the term of overrated, like he's like the face of the Marvel universe, and maybe he gets too much credit. I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with the Hawkeye as underrated. Overrated? I don't know. I haven't really given it too much thought, but I think Iron Man's pretty fair.
Well, it's got to be the right answer because he won the contest. So
That's
we'll
right.
just have to leave it at that. So thanks to everyone who entered. We do this show at GoldilocksShow.com. It's the website there. You'll get the audio and the video. You'll also get links to past episodes, the RSS feed, so you can subscribe in your favorite podcast feed. Also, we're on iTunes. You can subscribe there. And then also on Twitter at Goldilocks Show and Facebook.com/Goldilocks Show. All great places. I highly recommend you follow us on social media because we post our polls, our weekly questions, and also when new shows are published. So it's a great way to check that out. Okay, well, enough of the housekeeping. Let's get into today's topic. Last week, we talked about the Republican field for candidate of president in the 2016 election. We talked Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, Ben Carson, who I think I already forgot about, Mike Huckabee, Bobby Jindal, who actually, it's funny, I just had the Republican poll up, and I think he's like now at maybe 2 points. So
okay.
He doubled his points, so that's got to count for something.
Keep your eye on him.
Bobby Jindal. So we covered the Republicans last week. I thought it was a great episode. It's funny, each of our episodes keeps getting longer than the one before it. The goal was to hit 30 minutes. I doubt we'll ever hit that in an episode, but we'll keep trying. Tonight, the Democrats. We're going to start there. We're going to talk about the candidates, and then we're going to follow that up with the first ever presidential primary fantasy league. We're going to draft some candidates, and we're going to follow the progress throughout the election and see who can pick the better candidate. How's that sound?
Sounds pretty great to me.
So, Matt, I don't think we can talk about the Democratic presidential nomination without talking about one person. Bernie Sanders. No, I'm kidding. We will eventually talk about Bernie Sanders. No, I think we have to start with Hillary Clinton. The elephant in the room, as it would say. Right now, over the past 3 months, she's averaged 57.3% in the polls, a lead of 44 points over her second place contender, Joe Biden. And those numbers are very consistent, ranging as high as 62% and as low as 38%. But she's never been lower than that, at least in 2015 in terms of the polls. I would also point out that against most Republican candidates, she holds a minimum of 48% in the national primary, in the national race, with the exception of Bush, who she's a little tighter against. But it really depends on who you ask and what poll you look at. Matt, what do we think of Hillary Clinton's electability? Because that's really what we're focusing on here, and I think we did a good job of covering that last week, right? Was just talking electability. How does Hillary Clinton's electability look to you?
Well, we're standing right now. I think that her electability, for out of all of the rest of the Democrats, is actually pretty high. I would say that it's certainly higher than most. I'd say there are one, possibly two exceptions within the Democratic Party that could supersede her at the moment for the nomination. But I think she is a very strong contender. Obviously, the Clinton name carries a lot of weight. We talked last week about Jeb Bush and what a family name means for a candidate. I think that her name, like the Bush name, definitely brings up a lot of dirt on both. It brings up a lot of dirt. It also brings up a lot of whatever the opposite of dirt is. It's a name that's very positive and negative simultaneously. I think that a lot of people supported her husband when he was president. Then again, a lot of people also didn't. I think that her resume really speaks for a lot of the success that she has as a candidate. Being the Secretary of State, that certainly carries a lot of clout in political circles. But then at the same time, you also have the Benghazi scandal that occurred on her watch as Secretary of State, which a lot of House Republicans are not hesitant at all to bring up. So I think that it seems like Hillary Clinton is an individual where whenever she shows her political savvy or tries to make a move, whenever she shows the good, there's also, it's going to come with a little bit of bad, a little bit of controversy. So while she is a very risky candidate, I think she also is a very powerful one, at least in the potential she has.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. I want you to put hard numbers on it. Give me a percentage chance she is the Democratic nominee.
I will say, okay, I'm going to say 65%.
Interesting. Now that's lower than I thought you would say.
I think she.
Yeah, go ahead.
She'll have. I mean, I wasn't going to name who I think her stiffest competition is so far, but I think I'm going to do that. I think that she's going to receive a lot of a pretty big contest from Joe Biden, and I think she's going to receive a lot of opposition from another female candidate in her party, Elizabeth Warren. And while I don't really see um, either of them as securing the nomination, I think that they're going to give her a lot of a hard time in the primary.
I think let's rewind the clock. Okay, go with me on this. Let's enter our magical Goldilocks zone time machine and go back to April of 2007. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Hillary Clinton is the front runner for the Democratic presidential nomination. She leads polls ranging from 41 to 51% ahead of the other candidates, and she leads by a 30-plus point margin. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I see where you're going.
Spoiler alert, she doesn't win.
Right.
She doesn't even get that far. And that's what really concerns me, is it is so early, right? The other big thing is, what is the difference between April 2007 and April of 2015? Hillary Clinton does not look as good today as she did then. I don't think so. Her time as Secretary of State is not considered that well. She is followed by scandals, regardless of how true or big or interesting they are. People are going to bring it up. We have this email thing of hers in the last couple of weeks that, if you really look into it, is not that big of a story. Other people have done the same thing and no one has cared. She is a prime target for literally everyone. And to me, that is really concerning. Now, what works in her favor... Well, let me just say, one thing I think that doesn't work in her favor, and I think is overrated, is the Clinton name. If Bill Clinton announced he was running for president, I think he'd win. I don't think Hillary gets the credit he does. It helps, but in the same way we talked last week about Bush being both a positive and a negative, I think Hillary has to deal with the exact same problem. So while it helps her a little, I think everyone knows who Joe Biden is. He's the vice president. And I think Elizabeth Warren has done at least semi-decent... I would bet you in a poll more people know who Elizabeth Warren is than Bobby Jindal is.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I don't think that's as big of an advantage. What does work in her favor for me, and we'll get to this when we talk to the other candidates, but nobody else has committed in the way Republicans have to even potentially running, right? If you're a Republican at this point, you have a super PAC, you've been doing events in Iowa, you've been doing events in Ohio, you're putting together stump speeches, you're meeting with donors. Joe Biden has done almost none of that. Elizabeth Warren has done almost none of that. Hillary has done all of that. That's what concerns me, is if these guys are serious and want to win against her, I think they can. I don't think they're, at least at this point, that serious, and I think they need to get there fast. Because at this point, this was about the time in the 2008 election where Barack Obama started to pull ahead. Was about now through about June, July, and into August. Was where he got neck and neck, and then it was the debates in the fall that sort of really got the race going. So I think those candidates really have to get involved now. I know it's difficult for Joe Biden being the sitting vice president. He's got a little more finesse to go with it, but I just think all it's going to take is one person to stand up to her and to say, Hillary is a candidate who is full of problems, who we have seen before and who has failed us before. I am better because X, Y, and Z. I think they have a fantastic chance, because I don't think, to me, Hillary Clinton is very quickly becoming Mitt Romney, the candidate we're stuck with, who we don't want, but because there's nobody better, or because they're the assumed front runner, we have to go with them. And that is not gonna end well. That's just my thought. Can she be elected? Absolutely. I think. And I even think in a general election, I think there's a decent chance she'll win. I just don't know if that's how this ends.
Okay. Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points. I think that obviously the negative attribute is certainly attached to her name. We are seeing a great deal of controversy that's surrounding her right now in the news media, but I'm wondering how much of that is going to wind up being calculated in her own favor. How much of that is going to make people remember the Hillary Clinton name? I mean, when it comes time for the actual primaries to ramp up and to begin. I think that a lot of the things that she is cited for, people might see as unjust and as unfair. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's mainly because she is a female candidate, and a lot of the public uh, will judge her based on that, whether it's good or bad. I think that a lot of the controversy is really was really stirred up because of that, and I think a lot of people are going to see it as like picking on. Like the media is picking on her, and I wonder how a lot of that might wind up working in her favor. The Mitt Romney comparison that you gave is also very interesting. I think that she she definitely seems like, and I see where you're coming from. She seems the um, like the media is surrounding her so in a similar way. We're kind of stuck with her like Mitt Romney. But I think what Hillary Clinton has that Mitt Romney does not have is that Secretary of State title. I think that as far as Mitt Romney went, he was more of I mean, he was the governor of Massachusetts. There was a little bit of an outsidership. Um, Hillary Clinton has been there. She's been in the Oval Office. She's been in the the White House. She's been in diplomatic talks. I think that, especially when we're faced with threats from Iran or from Syria, I think that we want a diplomatic president. I think that our election of Barack Obama showed that, and I
Well,
think that is a huge strength that will play in her favor.
I'm going to challenge you on three separate points on what you just said because I really don't agree with that. First
All
of
right.
all, Barack Obama had no diplomatic experience when he was elected.
Well, he had no experience, but he was still an accomplished what was he? He was a community organizer, right? So he was an accomplished he was
All
an
right,
accomplished team builder, and eventually he had the communication skills. I
I
think
agree
that a
with
lot of
that,
people
but
saw,
I think it's a little different.
and they saw the potential in there.
Point two, I don't know if it's fair to compare a Democratic candidate to a Republican candidate in that I think Democrats care more about somebody who is Secretary of State, John Kerry being a great example, versus Mitt Romney, who, despite you might say, well, he was just governor of Massachusetts, he ran on being a businessman. And that's
Yeah.
what gets you elected as a Republican. I think if a Republican went up there and said, I was Secretary of State and I increased diplomatic ties, they'd be like, why didn't you bomb that country? You know, I don't know if it counts as much for Republicans. And then my third point is I would love to see a poll on how positively most Americans view her time as Secretary of State, because my guess would be a disturbingly high number of people see her as a failure as Secretary of State. Is that reality? Listen, who cares? Reality doesn't matter in a presidential election, right? It's what people think. And when you have Benghazi and emails and all of this stuff, I don't, it's all going to be about how she spends it. And she's going to get questions and debates about these things and her handling of things as Secretary of State. If she answers them right, people will think of her as a leader. If she answers them wrong, she's going to look like she's hiding something. And the number one thing people love to say about Hillary Clinton is she always looks like she's hiding something. So that is, I hope it works in her favor because it is one of the few things she has that she can really claim as her own. But there is a big chance that blows up in her face.
See, I disagree. I would think that I think that her time as Secretary of State is actually something that would be viewed positively by the general public. I mean, I don't really know the exact figures on that. I'm sure that uh, there are ways of finding that out, but I think that a lot of people who like Hillary Clinton really like Hillary Clinton.
That's true.
Whereas on the Republican side of things, I don't know. I can't name any candidate that people can really get behind. I think that there are many good options for someone who is voting Republican, but I don't know if there's that one unifier of the fans
Mm-hmm.
like Hillary Clinton on the Democratic ticket.
Yeah, yeah, it's just she's really I would not want to be in her position right now. I think it's the wrong, and we talked about this last week. The person who tends to be the front runner at this point in the race can almost never hang it out to the end. And that is so difficult because it is a long, long race. I think the single biggest strength in Clinton's electability is that no one is running against her. Basically. It's very much like Bush in 2000. Maybe John McCain gave him a slight fight, but he coasted that one the whole time. And it's very similar. And that is, I think, the single biggest strength she has. She can have all the scandals she wants. If no one gives her a fair fight, she wins by default.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good comparison. You really read up on your history there, Sean. Yes,
I cannot.
impressed.
And by the way, I will recommend to everyone out there, including you, Matt, if you have not read them, two books: Game Change and Game Change Double Down, which are books about the 2008 and 2012 presidential elections. They are phenomenal, so
Yeah,
good, and
I
really great
read
in
actually
audiobook
read.
as well.
I never heard Game Change Double Down.
Yeah, it came out just after the 2012 election, and it's the same style book, just follows that race, and it was just as good. So
Okay,
I
I'll
I
check.
highly recommend.
Game Change. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite contemporary political novels. Or I guess it wouldn't really be called a
And it
novel.
makes Hillary Clinton look like such garbage. Oh my God,
Does.
she looked delusional.
And it makes Sarah Palin look pretty good, actually. I
Yeah,
thought.
yeah. Well, did you ever see the movie version they did for HBO?
No, I didn't.
Oh, it's
I didn't.
funny. It's really funny. If you have the opportunity to, it's called Game Change.
Okay.
And they did it for
Check
HBO,
that
and
out.
it basically just followed the Sarah Palin aspect of the book with John
Yeah.
McCain picking her and this whole thing, and oh man, nobody looks good coming out of that. Nobody. And you do actually end up feeling a little bad for Sarah Palin, but really nobody comes out looking good.
Mm,
Um, so we've talked about Hillary Clinton. We do have to talk about other people who could be in the race.
I suppose we do.
And I think there's no better place to start than Delaware's own Amtrak riding, sunglass wearing Joe Biden, jumping Joe Biden.
Jumping Joe Biden.
Uh, our,
Grandpa Joe.
our current vice president. Um, the theory is that he is going to run. He has made almost no public indication he's going to run. He is currently polling at 12.8%. They're about 13%. With that number fluctuating as high as 17%. Second behind Hillary Clinton. I will start first on this one. I think for Joe Biden to get elected, he has to prove whatever happened before him being vice president doesn't count. He's been vice president now for 8 years. That is his political career. I don't care about Senator Joe Biden. Nobody cares. Who cares? Unless it's a scandal they dig up. I think his record from back then does not count. It's all about what he did in the last 8 years. Now you have to remember, this president fluctuates between unpopular and slightly less unpopular. So Biden has to appropriately distance himself from the president. B, highlight things he did as vice president, which I don't know what that would be. I mean, it's tough being the vice president because you only get to do little side jobs. You don't get to do anything big and flashy. And honestly, the only thing that comes to my mind is he was given the gun control task after Sandy Hook, and almost nothing came of that. Outside of that, I cannot name anything he's done. That is a big concern because he can't just stand up there and say, I was vice president at a time when most people didn't like the president. That's not good enough. Now, what he has going for him, he has, I think, a outstanding personality, a very electable personality. I think he can make a credible argument for foreign policy experience, which we talked about with Hillary Clinton. Being vice president, you can kind of claim things like that, and you can just assume that because he's next to the president, he has those things. And also, he's a Democrat who might run, and that may be all you need to get elected. If you can just take down Hillary Clinton, that's the other big advantage to Hillary has this advantage, but other people do too, where when you have a big front runner with no real candidates, if you're the one other person, it could become as good as a 50-50 shot. So he has that going for him. I definitely think he's absolutely electable. I think he won't be as scandal packed as somebody like Clinton. I just don't know if he can be as interesting, at least
Okay.
politically. I think personality wise, I think he'll be hilarious and fun and good at the debates and all of that. Just, I don't know what he talks about. Be like, I was the vice president. I would probably make a good vice president or a good president. I don't know. I don't know, Matt. What do you
Well,
think?
two things. The first thing I wanted to mention is it's interesting that you said that in order to be a successful candidate right now, Joe Biden would have to do his best to distance himself from the president because
Oh,
within the last couple of days, he's been doing the exact opposite of that. I think, if anything, he's been the president's attack dog in Congress regarding Iran and
mm-hmm.
regarding the dissenting senators. I think that he is really doing anything he can to protect the president and preserve his name. With an unpopular presidency like this, though, or like the current administration, I think that like you said, what you really want to do is separate. You want to kind of move away from him. But it's also at the same time a little bit difficult because Joe Biden has been so closely linked with Barack Obama ever since his election
Mm-hmm.
in 2008. So in order to just come out and distance himself now might be construed as pandering or a very obvious pandering or very obvious candidacy.
A flip flopper, as we would call somebody in today's political environment.
That's right, a very familiar term from the 2004 election. The second point I wanted to bring up is regarding the debates. I think that once the primaries kick in, if Joe Biden even decides to run for president, which I'm still not entirely convinced is going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
I think should he progress far enough along to make it to the debates, I think that he would be the best candidate on either side for a debate. I think that he's really proven himself, especially in the 2012 election against in the vice presidential debate against Mr. Wisconsin, Mr.
Howard Dean?
No, the
Oh wait,
Mitt Romney.
Paul Ryan.
Paul Ryan.
Okay, I don't know why I
Yes.
said Howard Dean.
He
I was like,
was from Wisconsin, right? I believe so.
yeah, Paul Ryan. Yeah, he was. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah, Mr. Bowflex machine.
what a weirdo.
Yeah, I think he absolutely destroyed him in those debates. I think
Mm-hmm.
that he did a fantastic job. He made him seem like a scared little kid.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Joe Biden would be a terrific candidate to in the debates. That being said, I'm not even really convinced that he is going to make the effort to put his name in the ring. I think that
Agree.
Joe Biden might just be content being Vice President Joe Biden, being Senator Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he wants to be President Joe Biden. I'm not really convinced on that.
I think it's tough when you've been vice president for 8 years and you've stood next to a man. You know, no one looks good after coming out of the presidency, right? You look at what like their inauguration day and then the day they leave, and they look like trash. They look awful,
Yes.
and you're
They
like,
aged about 30 years in
and
that
after,
4-year span.
and I'm sure being vice president isn't that much easier. It's probably easier, but not that much.
No.
So you look at that, and does he want another 8 years potentially of doing that? I mean, I think that's a legitimate concern. But at the same time, I think when you're acting vice president, you have to be really careful about what you do and how you announce things. And, how long does he wait to launch a super PAC, which is kind of one of the first big things you do as a candidate. Well, being acting vice president, it's very difficult to do. So, exploratory committees and things like that, I think he has to be really touchy-feely. And I think he knows, again, the name recognition that comes with his office, he doesn't necessarily have to be in now. He can wait until the last possible minute to announce after everyone else has, and I think he would still be okay. And I think he knows that. So that's why I think he's been really quiet. But I think you're right. I think there is a higher than expected chance of him just not running. And honestly, I think good for him. I don't think he should be pressured into doing it if he doesn't want to do it. But Yeah, he would be a very interesting candidate. I think he would be a strong candidate in the way he'd be very similar to Barack Obama when he ran in 2008. Charismatic guy who makes a lot of promises, may not have a ton of experience to highlight, at least specific experience for Joe Biden. But if he can just be interesting enough and have the other candidates be crappy enough, he's got a fair shot.
A fair shot. He also doesn't have the the challenge that Hillary Clinton had, which was running against Barack Obama.
Yeah, Hillary is not as tough a challenger as Barack Obama.
Hillary
I don't think
is far more beatable.
Yes.
Definitely far more beatable.
Absolutely.
In a primary campaign.
Now, let's talk about the third candidate. We've mentioned her before, the lovely senator from the great state of Massachusetts, which has a long history of successful presidential candidates. That would, of course, be Elizabeth Warren. Isn't she a Nobel Prize winner?
A Nobel Prize winner?
I thought maybe not.
Could be.
Okay, she's really smart. I guess we'll leave it at that. I think you get to go first. I went first on the last one, so why don't you go first on this one? What are your thoughts on Elizabeth Warren? I'll put this on you.
Okay, all right. Well, first of all, I'm not sure why Massachusetts gets to be a great state and New Jersey only gets to be a mediocre state, but whatever. I'll let that one slide.
Matt, it's because I'm from one of them and not the other. That's literally the only reason.
I'll let that one slide.
Hey, it's Taxachusetts. We're not perfect.
Massachusetts.
We produced Mitt Romney, so who am I to talk?
Uh-oh. But at least you produced the Kennedys, and you produced Cheers.
Yeah, we've got some things going for us.
You got some things. You got some things.
And the American Revolution.
But also Boston fans.
Oh. Maybe we'll have to do a whole episode on states.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Over or under on those.
Over or under.
Yeah.
I think that Elizabeth Warren is definitely a right now she's kind of underrated. I think she's kind of flying under the radar. She's kind of keeping herself a little bit more subdued. I mean, this one's the exact opposite of Joe Biden. It's pretty obvious that she's going to announce her candidacy, or she's going to that she's definitely going to run for president, more or less. How successful she is, though, I don't really know. I think she's definitely going to be construed by the opposition, and by opposition I mean conservatives, as being the ultra-liberal of the bunch. She's definitely has that reputation, whereas Hillary has spent her entire political career making herself seem as a centrist. She's much more of a moderate. I think that you would say Elizabeth Warren is wide left, right? So that is something that is going to it's going to rally a lot of Democrats to her side, but I think it's also going to alienate a lot of people who are on the fence. So with that being said, I gave a percentage chance to Hillary Clinton. I'll give one to Elizabeth Warren, and this is to win the Democratic nomination.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give her 25%.
Okay. I think that's fair. Yeah, I mean, first of all, let me just state for the record that Elizabeth Warren is the single closest we will ever get to electing Jeb Bartlett as president. Because that's really essentially, it's shockingly similar. The highly educated, really liberal from New England candidate. I'm just saying, it's creepy.
That's right. It is a little creepy.
Let me start with what works against her. I think, let's assume for a moment the top three are Biden, Clinton, and Warren, which I think in terms of the polls is very reflective right now. And let's assume they all run. Those are two huge candidates to be going up against. Massive. This is not like the Republicans, where there are 12 kind of average guys who have been around but aren't like super name. These are name brand candidates. And while people know Warren, do people know Warren? I think it is a significantly higher uphill battle for one of the things we covet when we've talked about these candidates, which is name recognition and instant acknowledgement of what that candidate is and what they stand for. You can probably guess what Joe Biden would do in a situation. You could probably guess what Hillary Clinton's going to do in a situation. We don't know enough about Warren. And I think that could really hurt her, especially against these two candidates. I think the other things that work against her, I agree. I think she is going to be seen as very leftist, which, again, you know who decides these elections? Independents. And it's going to be it's all going to depend on... Again, it's tough because I confused the primary with the overall election. I think in an overall election, if she became the candidate, I think it would depend on how crappy the Republican is, would depend on how much she won, to be honest. I think what works in her favor is the crowds she reaches. So I think people who want to see a woman president, in my opinion, would be more likely to get behind Warren, who I think has done more to help women, and is seen as less of a bad or unlikable person as Hillary Clinton is. Darrell Revis is going with the Jets. God damn it. I'm sorry. See, this is why you can't get alerts during the show.
ESPN.
I think
What's this? Tom Brady is going to the Miami Dolphins?
in a trade for Ryan Tannehill. God damn it. Yeah. And a pick to be named later. I think when it comes to Warren, what works in her favor is the audiences that she goes after, because it's amazing when you really think about it. She has the cult following a Rand Paul has, but without any of the damaging craziness. And that is a potent combination, because people who are fans of hers absolutely adore her. And the other thing is, most of her policies she pushed have targeted young people, minorities, women, all people who were critically important in both the 2008 and 2012 presidential elections.
I was going to say, where have we sung that song before?
It's the Barack Obama model, a candidate we don't know a lot about, but who can really push themselves as the change candidate, the candidate who's like no other candidates, the candidate who can really honestly make a difference because they've genuinely tried before in their life.
And the one who can really connect with them young people.
I think that could be the single best thing. She's also a fantastic speaker, if you've ever heard her speak. I think, again, Biden, Clinton, big personalities, big people. I think of all of these sort of third-tier candidates for the Democrats, I think she is one of the best to hold toe-to-toe with these guys. I just think she's really going to have a tough time shedding that elitist, Harvard, leftist personality. If she can spin that into a positive, I think she could absolutely shoot to the moon. And to be honest, if Clinton, Biden, and Warren were running, if played right, I think Warren has a better chance than Biden. I honestly do, because I don't think Joe is just Joe. And that's all he is. I don't think there's a lot of depth to him as a candidate. Whereas I think Warren is a really interesting person.
To me, Warren, in this race, seems like she could be a very potent and effective running mate.
She'd make a great vice president.
I think that she'd make a great. She has big ideas. She's has a lot of very creative and very, very modern ideas. Mm-hmm. I think that it would be great if a centrist like Hillary Clinton or even like Joe Biden were to take Elizabeth Warren as a running mate. I think that would be a very potent ticket.
Yeah, but don't you think the vice president role is really overrated? I have such a problem with people acting like the vice president does anything.
I think it's underrated. I think the vice president does a lot more than we give him credit for.
The vice president is a warm body that we can hold in storage in case something happens to the president.
See, I disagree. I think that what Joe Biden is doing in front of Congress this week, I think is evidence that
he's a cheerleader. He's a glorified cheerleader.
But his name carries weight. He's still close to the president, and he's a heartbeat away from the president.
But he does whatever the president says. So you're assuming that if Elizabeth Warren's the vice president, she's going to be able to enact some of her own policy, and that is not the case. She will have little to no influence. I think she would have a substantial influence, and I think a lot more than we see, and a lot more than we would give credit. And I will tell you this, and this is my ultra bold prediction for today's show: if Hillary Clinton is elected president of the United States, she will get taken down in a Nixon-esque sort of
coup.
No, no, come on. A sort of
Controversy.
paranoid conspiracy. She thinks everyone's out to get her, so she breaks the law
Uh,
type of
like
situation.
Cersei in Game of Thrones.
I don't get that reference because I've never seen it.
Oh,
But yes, exactly like that. Is she a
yes.
dragon or something? I don't know. I've never seen it.
That'll probably come out in book 6.
No, exactly. Which I'd read that. Yeah, I'm telling you. I think Clinton, to me personally, is gonna have a tough job proving that she's not just that media image of the crazy woman who will stop at literally anything to become president. And that to me comes off as suspicious. She's not out to help me as an American. She's out to get elected.
So right now, I think and I think we can agree on this. I think the most potent Democratic ticket, if we're both Democratic strategists,
Mm-hmm.
and we're putting out the most effective ticket that we can think of right now, I think we would go Biden-Warren.
Oof. Warren-Biden.
Oh,
Let him be vice president again. He was so good at it for the
He's
last
gonna be
8
vice
years.
president again?
I doubt he wants to.
It's
but-
never happened.
I don't see Joe Biden as president. He's Joe Biden. He's at the punchline of the joke. He's not the vice president. He's not the president. He's the president's friend. You know, like that is weird to me to think of him as president.
But people could have said the same thing about Al Gore and Bill Clinton, and Al
Al
Gore
Gore
gave
lost.
barely,
He
barely,
wasn't
and there are some people who will say he didn't,
Yeah,
like Michael Moore.
that's a whole story for another day. Well, good. I think this was a good discussion. We're running low on time. I don't even want to bother talking about these other guys, unless you want to talk about Bernie
What other
Sanders,
guys? Oh yeah, I forgot
Mike
about
O'Malley, Jim Webb, any of these guys. I mean, they're just so. Who
no.
gives a crap?
2% chance of winning for Bernie Sanders, and 0 for the other one.
Well, Bernie Sanders polling at 4%, so he's got that going for him. The real question is
It's higher than Bobby.
who's the Democratic Party going to put their money in and force behind? Because if they put themselves behind Warren, it could be a really interesting race. If they reject Hillary.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Not trying to put you on the spot,
Nope.
but do you think, in your research that you have come through and done,
Mhm.
do you think there is that sort of outsider dark horse candidate that Barack Obama was very early in the 2008 election season? Is there that little known guy, or perhaps big known but kind of surprised that he's in the election and he breaks out? Do you see that happening in this election, or is it going to be just the people that we named out there? Are we going to get any surprises?
I don't think it will happen. Now, I will give you 2 names. I don't think it will happen. And I can tell you why for each of these. Kirsten Gillibrand, who has been brought up a lot from the state of New York.
The great state. Well,
I think
pretty okay state of New York.
if the problem she has is no one knows, very few people know who she is. She hasn't done anything particularly big to stake her name on, and she's not a particularly interesting or good speaker. She doesn't come off as very smart. I know this because even though I live in Massachusetts, I get all the Albany area television stations, and so I've seen all the political stuff on her and when she ran and all that, and I know more about her probably than most of these candidates. I don't find her particularly appealing. The other name who I really like is Deval Patrick. From Massachusetts. What can I say? We're a popular political state. I think he's a really likable, really smart guy. I think he has the same problems a lot of other candidates do. Lack of name recognition. I think a problem with policies he's enacted that haven't worked out particularly well, as in Massachusetts is broke. But I think he has a personality where even if he didn't become a candidate this year, I think he could pull Barack Obama, which, if you remember correctly, Obama spoke at the Democratic convention in 2004, and then spent 4 years making a name for himself. I think Deval Patrick could pull that. I just don't know if this year is his year.
Okay.
Those would be my two outside candidates.
Mm-hmm.
I think Deval Patrick a better chance than Gillibrand, but I really think, I never put my number on Hillary Clinton. I honestly think it ranges between 50 and 75%, and I think it could actually get in the higher end of that in terms of likelihood. I mean, I really, really think that she's just going to pull a Mitt Romney, and no matter 47%, my wife owns dancing horses, I have an elevator car, you can just throw scandal after scandal after her, and it's just going to bounce off like Teflon, because she's the front runner and the assumed candidate. And that sucks. Because that's not really, to me, a fair primary at all. If the other guys don't even have a chance. But I hope that's not the case.
Hope not.
So, Matt, now comes the time. We've reached the end of our episode. We've talked about both political parties and the likelihood of people getting elected. It's time for us to hold the first ever, at least on this show, because I didn't do the research to see if anyone else has ever done this, so I can't claim it's the first, but the first ever Goldilocks Zone presidential primary fantasy league. All right, are you excited for this?
All right, yeah, I'm excited. Hopefully I do better in this fantasy league than I did in the fantasy football league I joined. Well, Spoiler alert, I only won one game.
Shame on you.
That's what I get for picking Colin Kaepernick as my quarterback.
Oh, Matt, come on. And I don't want to brag, but I came second in my league. So anyway, let's continue on. So here's how it's going to work. Okay? And please tell me if you disagree with the rules, because they're not set in stone. We are each going to pick 3 candidates from either party. Anyone who's running, or you could pick literally even if someone isn't running. I don't know why you would do that, but if you wanted to pick the Wizard of Oz, I don't care. You can pick literally anyone on the planet Earth, okay? We each get 3. We'll flip a coin and see who picks first.
3 from each party?
No, just 3 of any people.
3. Okay.
And we'll take a turn. We'll flip to see who goes first, that person, and then the schoolyard style back and forth till we each have 3 candidates. Okay. The way we determine who wins is who has the most votes in the primaries from start to finish, up to the convention. As a point of reference, I looked up the primary votes in the 2012 Republican primary. Mitt Romney won with 10 million votes. In second place was Rick Santorum with 4 million, followed by Newt Gingrich at 2.7, Ron Paul at 2, and then the third candidate and the candidate behind him, John Huntsman, had only 83,000. So there might be a little strategy in here where, do you pick 3 candidates you think will do well and won't win, or do you just go for the winner and assume you may not get other good candidates? Do you want someone who stays in long but doesn't win? I think there's some interesting strategy going on here. Do these rules make sense to you?
It makes sense to me. Let's do this.
Okay. Now, I made a mistake and forgot to bring a coin, and I'm literally strapped into my studio. Do you have a coin there with you?
I do. Oh, I actually, wow, this is great. I have a Sacagawea dollar.
That is the most American of money.
This is so cool. All right. Ready? Do you want Sacagawea, or do you want the eagle on the back? I think this is an eagle.
I will take the most American of symbols, the eagle.
All right.
Sorry, Sacagawea.
So I'll be Sacagawea with the baby strapped to her back.
All right, here we go.
And it is Sacagawea.
Sacagawea. Congratulations, Matt. You get the first pick. Okay. Who is your candidate of choice?
My candidate of choice, I'm going to select, is going to be...
With the first pick.
With the
in
first
the fantasy draft.
Who I believe is going to obtain the most votes in a political primary. You ready for this one?
I am so psyched.
Mr. Marco Rubio.
Wow. That is a disturbingly bold choice. I'm uncomfortable at how bold that choice is. Wow.
You know what they say, bold is beautiful.
Now, do you want to give a sentence or two as to why you picked Rubio first
I
above
picked
any other
Rubio
candidate?
first because I think that he is right now, like you said, candidates who gain traction early tend not to do well, and I don't think he really has built as much traction. But I think he's working the hardest,
Hmm.
if that makes any sense. I think he's been up in New Hampshire. He's been campaigning against. It was either House appropriations or against. I think it was a security spending bill. Um, Regardless, I think he's really sort of working toward building that campaign resume, and I just think that he's gonna rake in a lot of support in Florida, and I think that's gonna be huge. Obviously, Florida is always huge for an election, so
All right.
these are the reasons that I've chosen Marco Rubio.
All right. For the first pick on my team to be named later, I am choosing from the great state of New York, Hillary Rodham, Clinton. And I'm picking Hillary because even if she doesn't win, she is going to get a lot of votes. Because remember, it's an aggregate between your three candidates. So I think even if she doesn't win, she's going to get a lot of votes. So that I'm going to pick Hillary Clinton for that. And I think she's in for the long haul, even if she doesn't win.
Well, you've
She will,
outfoxed me, Sean.
because this is her last chance to win. She's not quitting.
You've outfoxed me because I was going to take Hillary Clinton probably second, but I mean, after all the shit talking you did during the podcast earlier, I was pretty sure you were never going to pick Hillary Clinton.
I wish it was a strategy. I
You
honestly
did it.
just don't like her. I wish it was like some kind of like thinking like, oh, good, I'll psych Matt out. Hey, and it may work against me. She may have a big scandal and just bow out 3 weeks in. We don't know. So, Matt, you have the next pick. I am envious of you because I think the second pick is going to matter more than the first. Because this is where you start to build the team of your candidates rather than just an individual star. So
I've chosen my quarterback. And
Okay.
now you're saying it's time to choose a wide receiver.
That's right, who can bring it into the end zone.
So I'm going to go with Mr. No. I am going to go with Miss Elizabeth Warren.
Whoa! Whoa! That is bold, but a smart choice. She would have been my second choice. So you definitely stole that from under me. I think that's a good one.
Yes, and I'm choosing her basically because I think that if Hillary Clinton is not successful, then I think that will only augment Elizabeth Warren's success. And now that Hillary Clinton is on your team, I don't want her to be successful. Therefore, at least within the context of this fantasy match, therefore I'm choosing Elizabeth Warren second. I do think that she has the potential to get a lot of votes and recognition.
And I think the other advantage she has is that having such a hardcore fan base, she more than anyone else will have people turn out in primaries, which is what really counts. So that's
right.
a lot of votes. So I think that's a great pick. For my second pick, this is really tough, I think. Oh man. I'm going to go with the guy who I don't think is going to win, but I think is going to hang in the race far just because he has the donors. I'm going with Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush is my second pick. I don't think he has a great shot to win. I just think that he's got so much money. He can pull a Newt Gingrich and really stay in there for super long, even though he's never going to win. So I'm going with Jeb Bush for my second pick.
I think that's a good pick. I think that's a good pick. I think that the media is definitely courting him very much right now to win the nomination.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's fair or realistic, but he's definitely getting the most hype on the Republican side.
Oh, yeah. All right, Matt, your third pick.
All right, pick number 3. It's going out to my man down in the bayou, Bobby Jindal. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
For the love of God, don't pick Bobby Jindal.
I'm just kidding. You know, in a perfect world,
Look,
we would have
He seems like a nice guy. I'm not going to give him crap. I just like if you're going for the person with the most votes.
We would have this man as
Oh,
our
he's
president.
just so awkward. He's like Paul Ryan level awkward.
All right. Yeah, he was pretty awkward.
Oh my god. All right, who is your real pick?
Okay, my pick for real, that is going to have to be Mr. Drumroll, please. Mr. Scott Walker.
Good pick. I think that's a very. I think between the two of us, we picked the top 3 Republican candidates.
I had a really, really tough time not saying Chris Christie for that one, but
you made the right decision, I think.
But I think it's gonna pay off in the end.
At minimum, he's gonna go farther, I think.
Yeah.
So I have a tough choice. I think I want the third member. Again, we're talking about you're setting up your fantasy lineup. I need a special teams player. Right? I've got the guys who are going to score the normal points. I need the out of left field, run back the punt 100 yards guy.
Okay. Yeah, that guy.
I need a Ron Paul, who, as I pointed out, earned 2 million votes, which was he was 4th overall. He got a lot of votes, despite the fact he was never going to win. People were really obsessed with him and voted anyway, that sort of Tea Party atmosphere. My question is, I'm tossed up between Mike Huckabee and Ted Cruz, who both court that same Fox News, the government lied about Benghazi, sort of super Republican base. It's a tough call. I'm going to go with the man who has more face value, and that's got to be Mike Huckabee. I think Ted Cruz may be a little too extreme, plus Mike Huckabee sold books, had a television show, ran for president before, very name brand. I don't think he's going to go far, but I think this election he's going to get the hardcore vote.
I think that is a bold pick.
I think, well, at this point, the problem is, who else am I really going to pick? Maybe Rand Paul might be a better decision, because he does court his own. Yeah, I'm going to change my pick. I think I'm allowed. It wasn't official because I said so. I'm going to go with Rand Paul, because I do think he's going to get more of the hardcore vote than either Huckabee or Cruz. So I'm going to go with Rand Paul. My lineup: Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, Rand Paul. Your lineup: Elizabeth Warren, Marco Rubio, Elizabeth Warren, Scott Walker. 2 Republicans and a Democrat for each of us. Matt, how are you feeling about your chances to win?
I'm feeling pretty good. To be honest, if I had a 4th pick, I would totally have gone Rand Paul. I was kind of hoping you forgot about him, because I forgot about him.
The one piece of my lineup I wish I had was Marco Rubio. He is the one guy that I would have dumped Rand Paul, brought in Rubio, and I would have had the dream team.
Okay.
That would have been great, but I'm very happy with my picks. I think it's going to be interesting to see. The problem is now we have to wait a long time to get the results. So we'll have to wait and see, and we'll update all of you at home on that. Now, we're going to hit an hour in our half-hour show, unbelievably, because it's so interesting. We talked about a lot of stuff, but we got to get to next week's question, which you came up with, Matt. I'll read what you read to me, which is, if you, the viewer, had the option of voting for either a computer that had infinite wisdom or a potentially flawed human being, which would you vote for President of the United States? I think it's an interesting choice. I don't want us to reveal what we would say just yet. I want the unbiased. I want to hear the raw opinion from the fans. But all of you out there, go to @GoldilocksShow on Twitter or our website, GoldilocksShow.com, for links to vote. I'll set up a poll, and we'll be able to get some either-or options in there, and we'll read the results on next week's show.
I think we will definitely have a good discussion about this. We talked about it before the show, Sean and I, and we both have very different opinions on who will make the more efficient president.
Well, wait, we didn't say we're voting on efficiency. Obviously, computer's more efficient. I was just concerned about which would be the safer option.
I was concerned about efficiency.
See, we're going to have to talk about this next week because we're out of time. So thanks to all of you
Yeah.
out there for joining us on the Goldilocks Zone. Our website, GoldilocksShow.com. All the links to everything right on the website. It's our one-stop shop. I highly recommend you go there. And, of course, follow us on Twitter at Goldilocks Show because we'll be tweeting the poll. We'll be tweeting when this episode goes live, when next week's episode, all the good stuff. It's there. I'm excited. Matt, we'll talk off the air. We'll figure out what we're going to do for next week. No ideas yet, but I think we've got some stuff floating around. We'll have a good topic. But until then, I guess we'll wish everyone out there a fair good night. We'll see you next time.